Class 7, Chapter 8 Reproduction in Plant. To produce its kind is a characteristics of all living organisms. You have already learned this in Class 6. The reproduction of new individuals from their parents is known as reproduction. But how do plant reproduce? There are different modes of reproduction in plant, which we shall learn in this chapter. Modes of reproduction. In Class 6, you learn about different parts of flowering plant. Try to list the various parts of plant and write the function of each. Most plants have root, stem and leaves. These are called the vegetative part of plant. After a certain period of growth, most plants bear flowers. You may have seen the mango trees flowering in spring. It is these flowers that give rise to juicy mango fruit. We enjoy in summer. We eat the fruit and usually discard the seed. Seed germinate and form new plants. So, what is the function of flower in plants? Flower perform the function of reproduction in plants. Flower are the reproductive parts. There are several ways by which plants reproduce their offspring. These are categorized into two types, asexual and sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, plant can give rise to new plant without seed, whereas in sexuals reproductions new plant are obtained from seed. Paheli through that new plant always grow from seed, but she has never seen the seed of sugarcane, potato and rose. She want to know how these plants reproduce. Asexual reproduction. In asexual reproductions, new plants are obtained without reproduction of seed. Vegetative propagations. It is a type of asexual reproduction in which new plants are produced from root, stem, leaves and buds. Since reproduction is through the vegetative part of the plant, it is known as vegetative propagations. Cut a branch of rose, a champa, with note this piece of branch is termed cutting. Bury the cutting in the soil. A node is a part of stem branch at which a leaf arises. Water the cutting every day and observe its growth. Observe and record the number of days taken for root to come out and new leaves to arise. Try the same activity by growing money plant in a jar of water and record your observations. Note budding excess, stem cutting of roses. You must have seen flower buds developing into flower. Apart from flower buds, there are buds in exile point of attachment of the leaf at the node leaves which develop into shoot. These buds are called vegetative buds. A bud consists of short stem around which immature overlapping leaves are present. Vegetative buds can also give rise to new plants. Take a fresh potato, observe the scare on it with the help of magnifying glass. You may find birds in them. These scales are also called eyes. Cut the potato into small portions, each with an eye, and bury them in the soil. What is the price of regularly? For a few days and observe their progress. What do you find? Potato plant sprouting from an eye. Likewise, you can also grow ginger 8.8 turmeric. Bryophyllum sprout leaf plant has bud in the margin of leaves. If a leaf of this plant falls on a moist ginger with a new plant sprouting from it, soil each bud can give rise to a new plant. Root of some plant can also give rise to new plant. Sweet potato and Dahlia are example. Plants such as the cacti produce new plant when their parts get detached. New plants. Leaf or bryophyllum with buds in the margin. From the main plant body, each detached part can grow into a new plant. Bojo want to know if there in any advantage of vegetative propagation. Plant reproduced by vegetative propagation take less time to grow and bear flowers and fruit earlier than those produced from seed. The new plant are exact copies of the parent plant as they are produced from a single parent. Later in this chapter you will learn that plants produced by sexual reproduction have characters of both the parent. Plants produce seed as a result of sexual reproductions. Budding. You have already learned about the tiny organism like yeast can be seen only under a microscope. These grow and multiply every few hours if sufficient nutrients are made available to them. Remember that yeast is a single cell organism. Let us see how they reproduce. To be the demonstrated by the teachers. Take a piece of yeast cake or yeast powder from a bakery or chemist shop. Take a pinch of yeast and place it in a container with some water. Add a spoonful sugar and shake to dissolve it. Keep it in the warm part of the room. After an hour, put a drop of this liquid on glass. Slide and observe under a microscope. What do you observe? You may see the information of new yeast cell. Yeast cell developing bud, new bud, chain of bud. The small bud-like projections coming out from the yeast cell is called a bud. The bud gradually grows and gets detached from the parent cell and forms a new yeast cell. The new yeast cell grows, mature and produces more yeast cell. Sometimes another bud arises from the bud forming a chain of buds. If this process continues, a large number of yeast cells are produced in a short time. Fragmentations. You might have seen slimming green patches in pond or in other stagnant water bodies. These are algae. When water and nutrients are available, algae grow and multiply rapid by fragmentations. And algae break up into two or more fragments. These fragments or piles grow into new individuals. This process continues and they cover a large area in short period of time. Fragmentation is spirogyra in algae. Spore formations. In chapter 1, you learn that the fungi on bread piles grow from spores which are present in the air. Repeat activity. Observe the spore in the cotton-like mass on the bread. When spores are released, they keep floating in the air. As they are very light, they can cover long distance. Spores are asexual reproduction bodies. Each spore is covered by a hard protective coat to withstand unfavorable conditions such as a high temperature and low humidity, so they can survive for a long time. Under favorable conditions, a spore germinate and develop into a new individual plant, such as the moss and fern, also reproduced by means of spore. Sexual reproductions. You have learned earlier the structure of flower. You know that the flowers are the reproductive parts of the plant. Stamen are the male reproductive part and pistil is the female reproductive part. Take a mustard, china, rose, petunia flower are separate its reproductive part. Study the various parts of the stamen and pistil. Flowers which contain either only pistil or only stamen are called unisexual flowers. Flowers which contain both stamen and pistil are called bisexual flower. Corn, papaya, and cucumber produce unisexual flower, whereas mustard, rose, and petunia have bisexual flower both. Anther filament, stamen, stigma, style, ovary, ovule, pistils, stamen, pollen, another self-pollinations, cross-pollination stigma. Male and female unisexual flower may be present in the same plant or in the different plant. Could you identify the another and the filamentous stamen fig? Another contains pollen grain which produce male gametes. A pistil consists of stigma. Style and ovary. Ovary contains one or more ovules. The female gamete or egg is formed in the ovule. In sexual reproduction, is the male and female gamete fuse to form a zygote. Would you want to know how the male gametes in the pollen grain reach the female gametes present in the ovule? Pollination. Generally, pollen grain have a tough protective coat which prevent them from drying up. Since pollen grain are light, they can be carried by wind or stigma, pollen, anther, stigma, cross pollination, self pollination, pollination in flower. Would you want to know why flowers are generally so colorful and fragrant? It is a attract insect. What is insect visit flower and carry away pollen on their bodies. Some of the pollen land on the stigma of flower of the same kind. The transfer of pollen from the another to the stigma of a flower is called pollinations. If the pollen land on the stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant, it is called self-pollinations. When the pollen of flower lands stigma of flower of different plants of the same kind, it is called cross pollinations. And pollen grain germinating pollen tube, zygote formations, ovule fertilization, zygote formations. The cell which result after fusion of gamete is called zygote.